Welcome. This is Dao with Ian Felton. Before we begin, think of the last time you were genuinely useful to someone. Not professionally, not because it was your role. You were just there. Something was needed, and you provided it. That's the heart of this episode's chapter. So this series works through all 81 chapters of the Daodejing, not as historical document, not as a philosophy to be understood and then set aside, but as a way of being in the world. And that's the key. If it's your first time listening to the show, no worries. Dao will meet you where you are. The Dao moment I want to share for this episode takes me back to Senegal, where I just was for a couple of weeks recently, trying to be open and present. I spent part of the day at the Museum of Black Civilizations in Dakar, and I was specifically in the section documenting Senegal's role as the main trafficking port for enslaved people being brought to the United States. And I was going through it, the artwork just kept accumulating. It was overwhelming by the end. I couldn't hold back the emotion. I wasn't performing it. It was just a cathartic moment. And I was just overwhelmed. So after leaving the museum, I went to Gorée Island nearby. I walked down to the port, took the ferry to the island of Gorée, where the door of no return is. And you can go inside and stand in the rooms where enslaved people were being held, and these dark, musty, tiny, cramped rooms before being forced to walk through a dark, very foreboding, scary doorway that opens out into an infinite expanse of ocean. The last moment in your homeland, the last moment with your family. So where does Dao actually show up in this moment? After I came back on the ferry, I needed a ride and walked back to the museum to wait for a driver. Traffic in Dakar is something else. Millions of people, city roads, and just tons of cars. Sitting in the hot sun, I was shaking a little percussion instrument I had bought it on the island, and I was just waiting. And then I heard, "Ian!" And I looked up, and it was my host, Modibo, and his wife, who had hosted me in San Luis earlier in the week. They'd come down to Dakar to do some business, and they were just driving past, smiling. I knew no one in Dakar, and the chances of that happening to me in that moment in a city of millions was extraordinary. But that's the Dao moment. There was no contrivance, not seeking anything, just an effortless, improbable convergence of things. And that's how you start to feel when things are working out and not being forced. What does the chapter 8 of Daodejing actually say? So, it's an easy title for this chapter. Water. Highest goodness is like water. Water benefits everything and doesn't compete. It dwells in places people shun, hence nearly Dao. Dwelling excels at lowness. Heart excels at depth. Giving excels at benevolence. Speaking excels at truth. Correctness excels at order. Affairs excels at capability. Action excels at timing. It alone doesn't contend, so it's without blame. So I made some choices with this translation that other translators don't make, and so I want to point that out, not to defend the choices, but just to explain that the choices themselves are part of the process that I go through in my own cultivation of Tao, or uncovering of Tao, I should say. So the first thing, it's kind of easy to miss, but I think it changes a lot about how this chapter lands. In the middle section, there's 7 lines that in the original Chinese, there are 3 characters per line. And if we took a look at one of those, I can just give you an example. Maybe I'll do a little bit of the reading from the Chinese just to give you a taste. It's Zhu Shan Di Xin Shan Yuan Yu Shan Ren. It's like that. So that's the taste of it. But what a lot of translations do after leading in where, hey, we're talking about water, they actually move away from water entirely and just start talking about all of those qualities as abstract concepts, and really taking you out of that embodied experience of imagining yourself like water, like we just did, and it gets philosophical and abstract. In my opinion, the Chinese doesn't support that, and it just doesn't, to me, it takes away a lot of the power by not keeping that middle section as describing the qualities of water. So I keep water as the subject of every line. If you read other versions, you will probably see what I mean. So the image itself is the teaching, and the moment you abstract away from it, you've done exactly what the chapter is warning against, taking something alive and immediate and turning it into a concept to be understood intellectually. That's what we're trying to move away from. I'm going to do analysis. That's what humans do, and I think that's why a lot of people tune into this podcast, but the analysis is to get us back to Tao. The chapter opens with 4 characters, Shan Sheng Ro Shui. I translated it as the highest goodness is like water. A lot of translations will translate that as highest good. It's just a tiny difference, but I think it matters because good is an evaluation, where goodness is a quality of character. And since in Taoism, we really want to lean more into an observational quality of things. Oh, I can see it benefits things. Deer are drinking it. All the animals are drinking it. There's a goodness to it, rather than a character description of that person is good or bad. So small choice, but that's the choice that I made. And then those 3 character lines, in the middle of every single line, there's one character, Shan. And I translated that as excelling, having a higher quality of something. So a lot of other translations, you will see it says good at something, which, going back to wanting to move away from judgments and more to something descriptive. So what water has isn't a technique, it's a perfect attunement. The thing and the expression are exactly the same. So I think excelling gets closer to that without overstating it. So Xin is in this chapter. I've talked about this before, where the literal translation into English would be heart, but in a classical sense, it's more about the entire inner experience. I still just translate it as heart, getting to that somatic foundation of this whole tradition. The original Tao in the Neiye, which precedes Daodejing, It understands that the center of awareness is not here, not the thinking part, but the felt center of the body, like just our whole centered self, our interior. There's a lot of these little choices that I made. For example, Zheng as correctness and Zhi as order. There's other translators that move it into political governance and administration. It didn't feel like this chapter was there yet, so I chose correctness and order rather than government management. So at the end, we kind of close out with this section on it alone doesn't contend water. So this is, I think, more support for me keeping the whole middle section as describing the qualities of water rather than abstract concepts, because we end with this reference back to water. It alone doesn't contend, so it's without blame. Blame, you'll find different translations. Fault, resentment. Fault's internal, it's something you carry. Blame is external, something that the world renders. So water moves through everything without having an interior to feel fault. So I wanted to end it with that image because it's clear, transparent, empty, if you will, but it's standing in the world. No one blames it. It's without blame. So those were choices I made. Someone else, different place, but at the same fork, might decide to go a different way and not be wrong for their reasons. But these were my reasons and wanted to be transparent about that. So for a moment, just imagine yourself being water, being like that, going through life, just feeling those qualities, that being willing to just sink to places that other people won't go without hesitation, without self-reference, giving freely to whatever is around in the moment, being natural and spontaneous, shifting with the seasons, being fluid, but also being able to crystallize and being able to be completely almost invisible depending upon the conditions that are around. That's what we want to feel deeply in our own presence and our own being, not the static way of being in the world that's around a fixed identity, but being like that, like water, and what a gift it is. So what makes water nearly Tao? First, I want to take a really big step back and point out, notice that there's a certain type of observation that had to even happen to begin with to notice these qualities of water, that there's something about this type of seeing that is special. We usually take water for granted. It's just something in a cup we're supposed to drink enough of. But the culture that Daodejing and Taoist texts arose in saw something else entirely. They observed how water moves through existence with such precision that they named it the closest thing in the physical world to Tao itself. That quality of observation isn't something you develop by trying harder to see. It's what's left when you stopped overlaying your own noise, your own identity, and all of the archaeological layers of your experience onto what's in front of you. And so pointing out that the practice of what we're doing here itself is what clears the aperture. So the practice clears the aperture, then the seeing takes care of itself. We're not striving to see, we just see. I was talking to my neighbor Jeff, who he's probably listened to this episode. He's a huge fan of Daodejing, and just like myself, and I was reconnecting with him and talking about how one of the overlooked two character concepts in Daodejing that is probably my favorite lately is Daodejing, and Dao is Dao, but then Chong has the character is a square, like an aperture. It's actually more like a rectangle and a line connecting it. And then to the left of it is the characters for water. And so I've talked about this in a previous episode. We've already encountered this, but symbolizing this empty aperture that the water of life just flows through without judgment, without control, without identities getting in the way, that when we're at the state of pure height of practice, that symbolizes it perfectly. Dao Chong, Dao just flows through us as the aperture in all of the 10,000 forms. We just flow through it. So when we're in that state, that's when we can see these deeper qualities to things and reveal them in such a depth like we're seeing in chapter 8. So let's look at some of these qualities. Dwelling excels at lowness. What does that mean? Being humble, not being afraid of the lower places, the shunned places. Like I went to Senegal just now. It's by UN standards and using the UN developmental standards, it's one of the least developed countries in the world. There's very few less developed. And it's not a tourist destination, particularly for Americans, but you don't hear a lot of Americans going to Senegal. Why didn't you go to Italy or Greece? It's nice there. So this is a perfect example of going to the places that a lot of people would shun. Why would you want to go and walk through the fishing village of Nadar, where people are still just living on the shore of the ocean using wooden boats, open fire, donkeys, carts, but kids running and playing everywhere, deep community ties, living simply but alive. There's not a billboard there. There's no advertisements like you see everywhere here. So water doesn't say, oh, I won't go there. That place is beneath me. It goes to the low places and fills it completely. And what you find is it nourishes it. It benefits it. So I walked through that neighborhood and I felt the ease with which everything flowed. There wasn't an infrastructure, bureaucracy controlling anything, just the natural goodness of the people and them leading themselves, which is what Daodejing talks about. When things are governed at their best, the people are leading themselves. And I felt that there. For the heart to excel at depth, what does that mean? Water just keeps getting deeper as the space allows. Look at, if there's a huge basin, water will fill it. Even the deepest ocean, kilometers and kilometers deep, the pressure keeps growing at the bottom, but water will keep accepting more. It will take on that pressure. It will absorb that pressure. And mountains don't do that. As they get high, they topple because they can't sustain the height. And so that's much different with water. It keeps saying yes. It keeps saying, yep, if there's more to flow into me, I can take it. So I connect that to my psychotherapy practice a lot, where I have to sit in openness and stillness and allow whatever content someone wants to talk about to come into the room. And it might be really uncomfortable topics and content, but for the sake of being what I need to be, which is accepting and open, like that water, just receiving more and more of whatever the needs to be said, you have to let that in without bracing against it. Otherwise, you'll steer, if you don't have that depth, you'll steer people away from things that are uncomfortable for you, getting that identity in the way, and excuse it away as rationalize it, whatever. And you also have to be unguarded to do that. So it's not just going to depth, but doing it transparently. And that feeds into the line about excelling at truth. Being transparent, it reveals itself. It doesn't hide what it is. And that's tough for us because unconsciously we're oftentimes guarding against ourselves by putting up a persona, a facade. It's programmed into us. It feels quite natural. But for us to be like the uncarved wood, or in this case, transparent like water, we have to go through life far less defended and guarded, covering over what's true in order to feel safer. Water doesn't do that. And that's also part of our practice. So what we're doing is stripping away what obscures Tao. Tao is always there. We uncover it through our practice. So what about giving that water excels at benevolence? Water doesn't make a choice. Oh, I'm going to go here and benefit the creatures over here, or I'm going to go there. It just allows itself to be pulled naturally away, just effortlessly, without care about itself. And wherever it ends up, it's a benefit, whether it's for fish to swim in, whether it's to clean something, whether it's for drinking water, whatever it is, it's going to be a benefit. It doesn't say, I'll be valuable in the mountain, but not in the lake. So how do we apply that in our own life? We're going to go through life in so many different roles. Husband, wife, son, daughter, all of the familial relationships, our work relationships, and then out in society, a lot of times, like, we're just the person walking through the parking lot. But we can still be a benefit there. And if we're sensitive, and if our practice is coming along, and our sensitivity to the moment is ripe, if we notice we can be a benefit when we're in that place, just the person walking through the parking lot, we can act spontaneously and let the goodness happen. It's not a savior impulse. It's not looking to go out of your way, just trying to prove that you can help someone. I mean, that's being contrived. That's not Wu Wei. So we have to be very careful with that we're not creating a new identity. It is happening spontaneously from the centered place, this place of aliveness, this place of expansiveness, where the boundaries have really blurred between our interior and exterior, and we're just flowing and sensing and noticing. And when the moment happens, it just happens of its own without a decision. So let me give you an example. One time when I was an undergrad, I was in one of those big lecture halls, hundreds of people, and the professor was trying to reach everyone in the room and really struggling with that. I could feel it. Not what she was saying, but the state that she was in, the sadness and almost despair underneath the effort. It mattered what she was trying to teach, and no one cared. So when the class ended and students filed out, I just walked up to her. I didn't have a plan. I didn't know what I was going to say. I just knew that I needed to make contact with her. And I got very close to her, and our eyes met, and I just said, I think you're a really wonderful teacher. And I could just see that dam break, and underneath just her whole energy changed. And that was it. I sensed the impact. What needed to be said was said, and then I filed out the side door just like everyone else. So what about these last qualities of Tao? Order, capability, timing. Water just creates order by not imposing its shape, but by settling into whatever shape is available. It provides, it fills in the gaps of the moment in a way that completes the moment. So that's the order part. It's not by trying to control everything that's out there. Water obviously has an impact on the environment. Just look at a carved canyon from the persistence of water flowing through it. But it's an unforced presence. That's how it carves out valleys over time, not through out there with a hammer chipping away at it, but just through consistent presence. And that's the same thing that we're cultivating. Yes, we will have an impact as we cultivate this practice, but not through forcing a personal agenda, but through this presence that we're cultivating. The effortlessness of the water cycle, how it goes through vapor to the clouds, to rain, to pulling, going down the mountain, into streams, lakes, valleys, to the ocean, and back up again. That cycle just happens all on its own, in its own time, with whatever the conditions are. It just keeps on going, and it's very complex, but effortless. There's no water cop out there. Hey, you need to evaporate now. No. So, same sort of thing. We let conditions ripen, and then when that time is ripe, when our sensitivity is there, we will know just what to do without thinking about it, without a plan. And it's about the state of being like water. And the timing is never wrong because it's not separate from those conditions. So it's not on a want that water has. And so we want to be the same way. We won't become water. I won't become water, but we can notice it, and we can cultivate the practice to be like it. We can let water show us something about what it looks like to move through the world without needing to win, without needing to be seen, without needing to be above anyone. Just present and useful by just being, not by trying to be useful. So find the low place and fill it completely. There's always going to be space there because that's not where people naturally go. And that's enough. It's nearly Tao. And nearly Tao is as close as any of us will get. If you do want to hear more about my Senegal journey, there's photos and a day-by-day account, a photo journal. You can find it at ianfelton.com/podcast. I'm also working on an app soon. It's going to have meditation tracking, journaling, a living glossary for terms, all the podcast episodes, lots of cool stuff to help us all keep practicing. Thank you for being with me today. 善善若水，水善利万物而不争，处众人之所恶，故几于道。居善地，心善渊，语善人，言善信，正善治，事善能，动善时。夫为不争，故无有。